What ingredients were used to make counterfeit wines in ancient Rome? How was counterfeit alcohol combated in the Middle Ages? And how much did the biggest fraudsters of the 20th century earn from counterfeiting vintage wines? USA. One of the oldest wine shops found itself at the center of a scandal after an undercover purchase. Journalists bought a bottle of bourbon from a boutique liquor store for nearly $1,000 and sent the whiskey to specialists for analysis. It turned out that the bottle contained not elite alcohol, but cheap swill. Experts discovered that unscrupulous producers were taking empty bottles of high-end bourbon, filling them with cheap whiskey, and then reselling them for a huge profit. The counterfeiting of alcoholic beverages began as early as ancient times. The writer and scholar Pliny the Elder lamented that the counterfeiting of wine in Rome had reached an unprecedented scale. Ancient Romans adored wine. They drank it as we drink water today, so its quality was extremely important to them. But in the heat, it was difficult for producers to pinpoint the exact moment of maturation. When the wine began turning into vinegar, they learned to mask the sour taste and sharp smell with herbs, spices, or honey. More often, however, the wine was simply diluted, not only with water, but also with boiled-down grape syrup. This was profitable. The diluted drink had a longer shelf life, and the syrup gave it a richer flavor. At the time, no one realized the health risks this posed, as the syrup was boiled down in lead vats. Therefore, frequent consumption of wine led to a common symptom known as Plautus colic, that is, lead salt poisoning, which caused stomach pain. In medieval Europe, the owners of drinking establishments quickly learned to pass off drinks of dubious origin as products from famous wine regions. This outraged not only the common folk. English King Edward III complained to the mayor of London about tavern keepers who stored barrels in their cellars and passed off foul liquor as quality wine. To thwart the counterfeiters, a special law was passed. Wine could only be poured from the barrel in full view of the patrons, and the adulteration of drinks was severely punished. Indeed, punishments varied. For example, one German wine merchant caught counterfeiting was forced to drink his own counterfeit product until he died. In the 19th century, European states, one after another, began passing laws that defined which beverages could be called wine. For the first time, clear quality requirements for wines were established. The people of Southern Europe waged a genuine struggle for the purity and quality of their wines. It's no coincidence that during wartime, the French would wall up their most valuable wines just to prevent samples from falling into enemy hands. Wine became a part of their identity. While some producers carefully guarded their professional secrets, others continued to counterfeit their beverages for profit. This often led to major scandals that seriously damaged the reputations of famous winemakers. Perhaps the most striking example of how producers could undo the work of entire generations is the story of Chateau Pontet-Canet. In 1973, the owners of the chateau were caught adding cheap bulk wine from Rioja to their own. Another major scandal erupted in Austria in 1985. It was discovered that some 70 producers across the country were adding diethylene glycol to their wines to make them sweeter. For the next 10 years, Austrian wine could not be sold outside the country, not because it was banned, but simply because consumers lost trust in the product. It took the country 10 years of incredible PR efforts to get its wine back on the shelves. Since then, the Austrians have been fanatical about monitoring their quality. In the 20th century, wine became a profitable investment. The world's wealthiest people began collecting rare wines. Naturally, there were also those who wanted to cash in on the new hobby of the rich. This wasn't difficult, because if a drink is truly rare, even highly professional sommeliers can't always distinguish it from a fake. At wine tastings, pranksters often easily fooled experts by offering them cheap wines poured into bottles from elite brands. Upon seeing a rare label, the sommeliers would instantly detect a sophisticated aroma and a harmonious, rich taste in a wine worth just a couple of dollars. wine fraudsters skillfully exploit human snobbery. The most famous of these was the German hardy Rodenstock. He became famous for a magnificent scam in which he began selling wine purportedly belonging to American President Thomas Jefferson, which had allegedly been discovered walled up in a mansion in France. The sale was lucrative. The cost of a single bottle exceeded $150,000. But when one of the buyers, billionaire Bill Koch, hired a former FBI agent to verify Rodenstock's wines, it was discovered that the technology to produce such bottles did not exist in Jefferson's time. Rodenstock managed to escape punishment for the fraud. The case was settled out of court. However, another con man, Rudy Kurniawan, was sent to prison for 10 years. He operated on a simple scheme. He bought empty bottles from restaurants, filled them with a counterfeit blend, and sold them as vintage items. The total damages inflicted on trusting buyers amounted to $20 million. It remains a mystery to us how this man managed to infiltrate the world of sommeliers and start selling wine blends to connoisseurs under the guise of samples worth a fortune. The whole farce was that the wine brands he sold as rare had in fact never existed. At times, government restrictions pushed producers to make counterfeit drinks. A real boom in alcoholic counterfeits began in the USA during Prohibition. The most obvious consequence in the US was the rapid criminalization of this field. Bootlegging, under the leadership of Al Capone, was particularly rampant. He opened numerous speakeasies where people drank all sorts of counterfeit products. In the Soviet Union, by the 1970s, the production of illegal alcohol flourished in the southern regions. The recipe was simple: cheap potato spirit, tap water, sugar, and baking soda. The fakes were distinguished from legal products by non-standard containers, crookedly applied labels, and the absence of a factory stamp. But they were cheaper, and therefore in high demand. If you calculate the efficiency of these underground operations, for 200 bottles, one could make 500 to 600 rubles in pure profit. For context, a Zhiguli car cost 6,500 rubles at the time. That's about how much one could earn in a single day. After the collapse of the USSR, those seeking easy money flooded the market with dubious products in which ethyl alcohol was replaced with methyl alcohol. Most often, the victims were alcoholics who bought medicinal spirits from pharmacies. Antifreeze was sometimes even added to the so-called funfyrkes, small medicinal vials of alcohol. After a wave of mass poisonings, the state introduced a series of restrictions on the sale of alcoholic beverages in small containers, and the illegal production of alcoholic products in Russia is now a criminal offense.